Hello everybody, I'm Krasia Tasio, and today I will talk about the total solar eclipse which will take place on 2nd of July 2020. What are the eclipses? How to perceive them? First, to tell you, it is really not appropriate to watch the eclipses. You are not sure how these energies will influence you. So even though you may hear different messages in media or tours, which some companies make in order to make money, I will strongly advise you not to go for that and not to watch the eclipses. Now, in Mesopotamia, in ancient Mesopotamia, the eclipses were not considered auspicious. Of course, they were considered ominous. And the eclipses were one of the ways considered to be communication between the gods and people. So these were and are ways that the gods used to communicate with us. The solar eclipse that will take place on the 2nd of July is not auspicious. And I will share in a minute my astrological chart to give you my reasoning. But this eclipse is quite complex. Now, we have a couple of eclipses happening every year. And of course, there is no place for fears and panic, but it's a place for having knowledge and understanding how to approach and how to benefit from the energies of such celestial events. So we have minimum 3 eclipses happening per year. Of course, we all know this if we have noticed, but usually they are not auspicious. Now, eclipse never happens alone. Usually is followed by another one. Therefore, in 2 weeks after that, there will be another eclipse, which will be a partial lunar, I think, but I will talk separately about this eclipse because it will be totally different, totally different astrological chart, and will have, of course, different impact as a result. So, according to first I will approach the eclipse from the perspective of the ancient Babylonian astronomer, as I'm basing my research on ancient Akkadian tablets, cuneiform tablets. So first of all, we look where the shadows of the eclipse go through, and I see from the website of NASA that south in North America, much of South America and the Pacific, Chile, San Juan, Argentina, Bragado, Buenos Aires, so big part of Buenos Aires and Argentina will be affected by this eclipse. Now, what is exactly the solar eclipse? It is happening when the observer, when you and me are standing on our positions from the Earth, and actually the Earth passes through the shadow which actually the moon is creating. And with this shadow, the moon is hiding, it's eclipsing the sun totally. So the sun will totally not be seen. So this can happen only when the 3 planets, sun, moon, and Earth are aligned with each other, like they form a line. Now, the sun will be hidden this time by the disk of the moon. So what is very important here to understand is that this eclipse is happening in a very, very important point for our era. And this is the point of the summer solstice. So the summer solstice is happening sidereally, astronomically, in the 5th degrees Gemini. We know the vernal equinox is happening in the 5th degrees Pisces, the summer one in the 5th degrees Gemini, the autumn one in the 5th degrees Virgo, and the winter one in the 5th degrees Sagittarius. So we have the most powerful axis among the 2 axes of the equinoxes and the solstices affected. And this is the axis of the solstices. Very important, very impactful. We will feel this for sure. Now, also very important to remember is that we live in the mini era of Mars. Our time, the time that we live in, the moral values that we experience, bad or good, are ruled by Mars. The events that take place are Martian. And why is this? I have a separate video on this. You can look at my video on why we live in such turbulent times. I think it was called or similar. And this video is exactly about this, the rulership of Mars as mini era of Mars that we live in, because we live in the great era of Pisces, and the division, the Dodecatemory is ruled by Mars, and therefore Mars is very, very much influenced in everything we do. Every activity that is happening on Earth pretty much has the energies of Mars. Think a bit and you will see that this is exactly that way, and that whatever happens on the sky is immediately receiving, it's manifested through event, through or emotions, both on personal and also on mundane levels. So we live in Martian mini era. The eclipse is happening on a day ruled by Mars, and this is also very important. So this eclipse will have, to a degree, the energies of Mars. And I will share my screen to give you more information, but before that, to emphasize that Mars at that time is invisible. When Mars is invisible, happening in Gemini, his effects can be quite unpredictable. Another important thing to say that during eclipse, when malefic planet is invisible, it's considered good, as the malefic planet is not biting that hard. But when Mars becomes visible, then we will feel, of course, his powerful energies. While he's invisible, he can be quite unpredictable. So this is a bit the side effect of the invisibility, meaning hidden in the rays of the sun of the planet. So let's share my screen. So look what is happening here. This is the axis of the eclipses. But let me explain you that we indeed need to look from sidereal astronomical point of view, as you may be misled if you look tropically, as this is not astronomical, and the eclipses are very, very astronomical events, can't be more than that. Now, on these 16 degrees of Gemini, we're having the sun eclipsed by the shadow of the moon. And of course, what we know about Gemini is that, of course, it is ruled by Mercury. Of course, it is about communication, about media, about communication, media, traveling, markets, money. The prince is Mercury, and in the eclipse is happening in the sign of Mercury. In this particular moment, Mercury and Mars are conjoined together in Cancer, and this conjunction will have very important impact on this eclipse, as I told you, because we live in the era of Mars, because it's a day of Mars, and because Mars is so much emphasized on different ways. So, and here is the sign, are the two signs where we have the points of the solstices. Now, the eclipse is taking place in a sign which is Mercurian. So, Mercurian place, and at that particular moment Mercury is invisible. The markets will be afflicted worldwide. The wealth will be endangered. And what is interesting here also is that the eclipse is happening while there is a very heavy opposition between Saturn and Venus, Venus, Sun, and Moon. What is this meaning? Because we have Saturn, Pluto opposing Sun, Moon, and Venus. Now, this opposition is a heavy opposition. It is an opposition of, it can be hostile. It can result in conflicts. The Saturn and the Sun are planets that are representing the power, kingdom. Saturn is about the king. Saturn also is the star which is ruling ancient Akkad. And I'll explain you what is this meaning. So the sign of Mercury is endangered as Mercury is conjoined Mars. Mercury is heroic, lordly. He has great strength when visible. Right now he's invisible. And this way, immediately, even though indirectly, the speech, the communication, even technology, you see different technological crashes, for example, but the freedom of speech can be heavily endangered all over the world, or different ways can be imposed by the powerful Saturn governments, which can impose different measures against the freedom of speech. This is very, very possible. What we also see about Saturn is in a phase called acromical rise. You can imagine that during this phase, Saturn is just born, extremely powerful. It's like he's just born, strong, powerful. He's retrograde, which is not good. And he is strong and powerful, ready for action and tireless, basically. So this is a very powerful leader who wants to dominate over the others. And this is Saturn. And also this way, this will impact the world. And Saturn is Akkad. Saturn is the ancient Akkad, which would stand for contemporary Europe. And if we look also at the sign of Sagittarius, where Saturn is, this represents, according to ancient texts, some European countries, Spain, Arabia, Hungary, part of Germany, a part of England, and then the sign of Gemini, which it is the States, part of Belgium, big part of Belgium, Libya, London, Melbourne, Australia, San Francisco. So what is actually happening is that we have here this very powerful king who wants to dominate, and most probably Saturn will bring floods. He was called Dingir Jin in ancient Mesopotamia. This is the heart, the true, the righteous, the fair God, the one who, especially the places which have the shadow of the eclipse, like South America, Northern America, this will bring lower temperature. This can bring floods. This can bring hostilities in Europe, in America. Also, this particular eclipse, for the reasons that I will explain you in a second, is happening in the lunar day, in the lunar month Shiman, and the lunar day 28. So the eclipse will be impactful because the 28th lunar day eclipse is a day when actually the moon didn't complete her cycle, and therefore the moon is nervous, not very pleased. And also the 28th lunar day is standing for Akkad, for Europe. So we can expect bad weather, floods, conflicts, hostilities. I don't want to say word terrorism, but it's very, very possible. I hope here for the influence of Venus, because when Venus is participating, she can soften a little bit. And then the eclipse is happening on the path of Anu, because we have the sky divided into 3 celestial paths, and every celestial path is having rulership over certain part of the world. So this eclipse can impact for bad Iran, some countries in Asia, and also China. However, the most powerful influences will be over the countries where the eclipse the shadows will be visible, and I already listed them. So we will see some very unpleasant events in Europe as well. So imagine like this: whatever happens on the sky, it resonates on Earth. Take, for example, that you have the image of the lion, and that you have Mars in the heart of the lion. Certainly this can have an impact on the kings on Earth, or even on the lions on Earth if we had lions. So another interesting thing also is that the timing of the eclipse. It is happening in the third watch, because we divide the day and the night into watches, and the third watch completed watch is about the length of the impact of the eclipse. It's like how long we will be experiencing the energies and the results of the eclipse afterwards. And according to the ancient texts, 3 months and 10 days after the eclipse, we're going to experience the energies of the eclipse. So there will be one king that will wish to dominate and aggressively totalitarian way, and this will be bad for a cat, bad for Europe. Also, the good thing is that there is nothing that cannot be reversed because with God's will, of course, because in Babylon, for example, when there was a bad eclipse happening, and when they would see that this eclipse is not good for the king, because when the eclipse is good for one country, according to them, it's never good for the neighboring country. It's like, I will show you an interesting, for example, there were, I'm going to share my screen again. Look how interesting. This is the ancient map of Mesopotamia. Now, these are the two rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, and here is contemporary Iraq. In the past, this was Babylon, Akkad. And here is the contemporary Iran. And in the past, this was Elam. And these were the great enemies here, Iran and Iraq. These were great enemies. So they would say, if the eclipse shows that the eclipse will be good for Iraq, it was never good for Iran, and the other way around. So they would, the simple logic behind this is that when it is good for me, it is never good for my neighbor, and the other way around. So this is the very interesting thing of how they would approach the impact of the eclipses. And what we see here is that we will have some bad markets, wealth issues, scarcity, we will have floods, and we will have powerful ruler in Europe, and this is not good. Partially, of course, the eclipse will impact America, the markets, and a possible conflict on different levels, economical or multiple levels with Iran. And also the, but what did they do actually? When they would see, for example, that the king will be in trouble, because when Saturn is retrograde and when Saturn is in a chronicle rise, there are possible hostilities, and at least people can stand for their rights. And as we said, Spain, France, there will be no complete peace in Europe after this eclipse. But what they say is that they would perform rituals. And there was one very interesting ritual when they would see that the king is in trouble due to possible hostilities. Then they would place kettle drum before the god Saturn or Mars upon the clothes of the king, and then they would chant incantations, and they would perform this the chant of Saturn at the same time, and the god will bless the king. So this is how, and the clothes, of course, would represent the king. You can in astro magic, this is very interesting. So the ritual probably they performed, especially when Saturn, the malefic planets would say that would mean that there would be some bad impacts for the figure of the king, of course. So there are many other rituals, but the example of this ritual is just to tell you that everything can be reversed with prayers, with meditations, with moral values, maintaining them, with connecting with the spirit world and asking them for support. As you can see, they would chant the incantation of Saturn in front of the clothes of the king. So they would basically ask the heavenly king for mercy, and this is exactly what was done many times by the astrologers and the exorcists, actually, because the exorcism was such a common event, and so they would do this, and they would save the destiny of the king. So nothing is irreversible with our faith, with our high vibrations, if you want, connection with the spirit world. But my analysis is to tell you that unfortunately the eclipses are not joyful events. They are not. But what we can do is be careful, be aware, be knowledgeable, be informed. Knowledge is power. And like somebody said, when you know somewhere it will be raining, just take or just don't go out, or take umbrella, or just during the moment of eclipse, it's very good to be conscious, to be very, very spiritual, to pray, not to watch it, not to expose our food to or water to the eclipse, also not to eat and also drink water during the eclipses. This is also very important. But to pray will be wonderful. Maybe it will be helpful for enhancing one's intuition. Depends on how exactly you connect with these energies. But another very, very important thing that I forgot to mention, a second, is which part of the moon will be darkened first. I think, because I will not stay to watch the eclipse, but what I saw from the astronomical images by NASA is that the south eastern part of the moon, of the lunar disk, will be eclipsed first. And this is also another sign that the Iranian lands may be in trouble. It will not go that well in Iran after this eclipse. So if you have questions, write below. I will be happy to read your comments. I don't want to finalize this sadly. I would say that there will be a lot that we can reverse. Of course, the eclipses can impact also us on individual level, and especially people who have ascendant Sagittarius, ascendant Gemini, descendant Sagittarius, Gemini. This axis is a bit afflicted. You may need to be very spiritual. You may need to ask support from heaven, and you will receive it. You also may need to be aware that for 3 months after the eclipse, you may not be that lucky. You may see that there will be some results that you'll be expected, and they may be delayed. So this is how also the eclipses can affect you. If this axis of the Sagittarius, Gemini, is happening on midheaven, lower meridian, your career may be a bit affected. What is this to say? That if you have a Sagittarius, Gemini axis on a key position on your chart, or if you would like to look tropically, okay, this will be Taurus, Scorpio. So, but I would rather look at this astronomical event definitely sidereally, astronomically. So this would say, keep low profile, do your routine, and don't initiate, at least wait for these 3 months and 10 days to pass. Don't initiate anything new. Don't start new projects, because you may see that they will be slowed down, they will be a bit unlucky maybe. Take good care for your health. Use the eclipses from very spiritual point of view, like it's happening on your axis. Yes, the universe, the gods try to communicate to you something. They try to tell you exactly what Saturn wants. The righteous, he's the judge, he's the fair god. So he's telling you, never say a lie, be very responsible for your actions, maintain very high moral values, be empathic, don't hurt others, and all these that we know, but sometimes we forget. So this is what the axis of the eclipse telling you, most probably. So it's not a devastating event, it's a lesson, and it will pass. So with this, I'm completing. Thank you.